the second part of our series on ending jealousy permanently, we looked at what happens when you take the label jealousy off of the ongoing active experience that you're having and find out what's going on underneath that label when you stop calling the experience jealousy. It requires applying a kind of mad curiosity to your own experience. Because suffering, like jealousy, occurs when feelings get trapped behind a wall of meaning, there are two generally useful strategies in dismantling suffering to free yourself from it. One involves bypassing those structures of meaning entirely by working directly with sensations and other experiences that occur in your body and emotions. The other strategy involves dismantling the various structures of meaning that trap the feelings in place so that they can begin to flow more freely again. When working with jealousy, one of the most common structures of meaning in need of dismantling is insecurity. We have all learned to be insecure. If you can make somebody feel bad about themselves just for being themselves, and then make them feel better when they do the things that you want them to do, you can control them. And we have all learned to be controlled in just these ways, because we've all grown up in societies that socialize young people to become members of cultural communities. And so, unfortunately, we've learned to feel bad about ourselves so that when we do what we're supposed to, we end up feeling better, and when we're not supposed to, we end up feeling worse. We've internalized this kind of insecurity and we walk around with it. It comes into play around jealousy because if you start to compare yourself with or compete with somebody who you fear will get in the way of you getting the love that you need and you lose in that competition, that's insecurity. Think about how this belief goes for you. When you're hard on yourself, how unlovable do you think you are? How undesirable or undeserving do you consider yourself to be? What's the inner dialogue that goes on when you're being hard on yourself? And if you would for a moment, just try saying the things you say to yourself in your head out loud. Maybe you already do this. Say them out loud and hear what they sound like. What does that kind of inner dialogue imply about your beliefs about people? Are those the kinds of things that you would want to say to somebody else? And if so, why? Do you believe that people deserve to be shamed and criticized when they're already having a hard time? I suspect that that's not what you want to believe, but you may have come to believe it. And there's another belief that's possible, which is that people deserve gentleness and love and acceptance when they're having a hard time. And that is where the Loving Yourself project comes in. If you imagine yourself standing in front of a mirror, you might look at yourself and criticize certain things about the way that you look, judge yourself because you've learned to do this. The Loving Yourself project involves gently stopping the shaming and the criticism. You might say to yourself, hey, wait a minute. No, you don't need to talk to yourself like that anymore. Don't do that. There are nicer ways to speak to yourself. Why don't you try telling yourself, you're beautiful, you're perfect, I love you already exactly the way that you are. Say to yourself the kinds of things that you might say to your children, or your hypothetical children if you don't have them. And I imagine those are the kinds of things that you would prefer to say to yourself. Sometimes that kind of gentleness isn't enough and you have to be firm. You have to bring the full force of your will down on the habit of criticizing yourself and say, no, I refuse to believe those lies anymore. And that will is needed to break through the ways that you've internalized messages about yourself that were always lies and never true. With practice, it is possible in a gentle or firm way to bring your will to interrupt that process so you start to speak to yourself differently. Now, the goal here is not positive thinking or affirmations. I don't want you to think that just because you're perfect as you are, in some respects, that you're not in need of self-improvement. All human beings are in need of ongoing growth and development. It's part of being a person. And that ongoing growth and development can be very nicely spurred by insecurity and the experiences that you have when you compare yourself with others. So an example of how this happened for me was I was in a relationship with a woman who was strongly attracted to another man. And this other man had some nice qualities that she appreciated and I did as well. He had these big, beautiful muscles. He worked out a lot in the gym. And he had this nicely sculpted body in a way that I don't. Muscles much bigger than mine. He also had this beautiful quality of presence that he brought to relationships. And I noticed other women were also just kind of stopped immediately by this. There's something about it that was very riveting, and also not something that I thought that I had. In the process of feeling insecure and then loving myself through it, I noticed a couple of things. The first is that while I wished I could have muscles like his, I realized I was never going to. It's not because I couldn't if I wanted to. If I decided to spend more time in the gym and working out and lifting weights, I could. But there are other things that are important to me in my life that I value more, such that I will probably never value having muscles like that enough to develop them. So I just needed to accept that was never going to be what was appealing and attractive about me. I could admire him and other men for their beautiful, well-sculpted weightlifting muscles, but I wasn't ever going to have them, and I could just accept that about myself. Other qualities would be attractive about me. But this presence that he had, I wanted that for myself. And so I started to learn about what it was that he was doing and what it was that I was not doing that allowed me to slow down and breathe differently and be with people in a different kind of way, to bring that quality to my relationships that I think has improved my relationships. And so I was able to recognize a quality of his that I would probably not have. And there are qualities like that that you will never have, either because you're just different from someone else or because you don't value improving yourself in that way. And there are other qualities that you would like to cultivate deliberately. And that process of self-acceptance and the process of self-improvement are both much easier to engage in when you're not being hard on yourself. They actually are both supported by you being loving and gentle with yourself exactly as you are. The thing about insecurity is that we think we'll be secure if we just have slightly different qualities that will make people love and want us more. But that kind of love is always at risk because we always change. If we stop having those qualities, we won't get the love we want anymore. It's only unconditional love that is the true source of security. And it's something to strive for, and you start by giving it to yourself. This project, the Loving Yourself Project, is really just a set of practices and beliefs that you can use to replace and override the structures of insecurity that you may have built up within you over the course of your life. The third permanently moment that happens for people, when things shift for them forever and they're no longer ever jealous again in the way that they were before, occurs when you find the particular structures of meaning that are yours. And if insecurity is yours, dismantling it and replacing it by engaging ongoingly in the Loving Yourself Project may be just the way to change things permanently. In our next video, we'll be looking at a different structure of meaning that people bring to the experience of jealousy, that of scarcity, of thinking that you're at risk of never getting the love that you need if you lose the love that you have. And so we'll look at that and its replacement with the Deepening Intimacy Project in our next video.